Hello, guys. Today I'm bringing a special episode with a special guest, Nithin, and we're going to be talking about effective ways of language learning and how we can implement all of that into the idealistic, perfect app. I hope you guys enjoy today's episode. It is a rather long one, so treat it like a podcast. I would just cue it up while you're in a car ride or something like that. Yeah, but just enjoy. Hello, guys. Today I'm making a special video with a special guest. His name is Nithin. He's a student at University of Maryland. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate the introduction. Yeah, as you said, my name is Nithin Pillai, and I'm a computer science plus math major at the University of Maryland. Love learning, and yeah, I'm just really trying to understand how to go about, language learning. One of my goals is to learn Hindi, and I wanted to create potentially an app that could facilitate that learning process. And to that, I decided to speak to none other than the language learning maestro himself, Jeffrey Yan. So, yeah, please take it away.
Yeah, so um, apparently Nitin today wants to consult me about language learning in regards to his journeys with Hindi. And he did so specifically with me because I had previous experience learning Japanese as well as Chinese, and using those experiences to create a Japanese club, which I had in the high school years. And I had that during that time, I was making my own curriculum for how to best learn languages. And I've been constantly at that for past few years. So it's kind of an interest of mine to find the most efficient way to learn language. And so that's what we're talking about today. It's not no by no means is anything professional, anything really serious, anything grounded by heavy research, but it's just a casual conversation and might pose some interesting ideas to your mind. So yeah, okay. Can you
Yeah,
begin with your overview of your
yeah, I can
question?
start it off. So, yeah, I can start it off. So, really, my first question is, if you could start over, right? Go back in time and start over. What would you do differently? And in what would you learn differently to learn language in general? Let's start in general because I know learning Japanese is probably different from learning Hindi and different from learning, I don't know, a different language like Tamil, for instance. So once again, if you could go back in time, what would you do differently to learn languages more efficiently, generally?
I think that well, first of all, we have to get rid of like the preconceived notion of what people usually learn language with because there's two
Okay.
faults in that. One is that it's always in a group setting, right? So you can't manage by the individual. So it always has to be through a
Right.
systematic way where everyone can follow along. And secondly, it's a lot of times mandatory. So there's a lost that sense of like why are you doing it? And having that why is really
Right.
important. I've just from influential book called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins that a big part of why he was able to get through his Navy SEAL training stages um, and his Hell Weeks are because he had the why and why he was doing it. It's the same thing with language learning because there's a lot of determination, perseverance that you go through for years on end to get to the levels that you want in the language. So it's kind of the same idea that you have to
Right.
have the why you're doing it. And a lot of times getting that why can come from simple enjoyment, a simple like a passion about it, or just anything in general that can bring the why. So in my regards to me, what I would do differently in terms of language learning is I already kind of have that why, but I'm just saying that it's important for other people to find it too. So like asking yourself, why are you trying to spend hours and hours of your life getting to a level of proficiency when you can be doing anything else you want. So if you don't have that why, it's kind of hard. And I think it's inevitable that you quit, but just it's good about that. And second, this is the thing that I didn't really do in the beginning, which I do recommend for people who are learning languages, is to do a blend of immersion and specific studies on like grammar and vocabulary. And this is the kind of the philosophy, the club that I had without learning language. And it's a combination of these three things. So typically in school, you just do grammar and vocab, and you never do any immersive. And what that does is it helps build a lot of the tools they need for the language, but you never actually get to use it in practice, right? Kind of the idea of learning in class versus actually applying it in research. And where when you learn in class, you hear all the input you have, you know all the tools you can use, but if you never output it yourself and never use it yourself, you never know how to do it. So what I recommend is that you spend a lot of time, especially in the beginning, focusing on these tools, like going to the lectures, going all the things, learning all the information. In the sense of language learning, it's going to be a lot of vocab training and some grammar training, more so later as you go on. The vocab is the base that you're going to be using for so much of your language, right? You can't make any phrases, any dialogue without a strong base of vocabulary. So doing that, especially more in the beginning,
Right.
and building a huge vocabulary, like usually it's around like 700 the most commonly said words. Get that, you can have around 80% of language understood. 80% still not going to get you to high proficiency, but it's a very good start. And so once you, but then
No.
remember, don't underestimate. Oh, sorry, hold on. Don't underestimate how hard it is to memorize 800 words because your brain can only un, like memorize so many things at one point of time. So it usually takes a long time to actually get to that point of 800 words. If you do like
Right.
10 words a day,
Hmm.
that'll take you 100, no, sorry. If you do 10 words a day, that'll take you 80 days.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, 80 days.
Yeah.
So it's still very hard to do. And you have to be remember, like, do space repetition for those words. I'll get into that in a bit. You had a question?
Yeah, no, I was just saying, it's kind of similar to where you're heading with this conversation, but like you said, learn 800, 700 words of the commonly most used words in the language, right? And like, how would you go about doing that? Because I know that sometimes you could use like for instance, when I'm watching like a Hindi movie, right? Like I look at the captions and then I see what they're saying, and then I relate it in that sense. And that's how I would learn like vocabulary without explicitly going in and going into like a dictionary and creating those flashcards, for instance. But like you were gonna address that, I think.
Yeah,
But
your
how would you
way,
go about doing that?
your way is totally viable too. It's like I would say it's like the same thing as it's the same. Going back to the same analogy about the lectures and the research, you can learn all the material and
Right,
research itself, but it's not as straightforward as what you're telling me, right? You can learn these words through immersing and just hearing them
right.
over time, but getting them straight out of the way is just a little more straightforward option, and it's even better when you couple it with immersion. So I'm gonna get into that in a little bit, but
Okay.
um, just for the vocabulary part in terms of how you're gonna do that, right, 800 words is not easy. When I started learning a language that I completely don't know, I started learning Korean for a little bit. Um, I didn't do any immersing, and I tried learning vocabulary a day, even 5 words a day. As soon as I stopped for one day, or like I don't refresh myself the next day after, I lose all that information. So basically,
Right.
you have to use a
I
system
see.
of like spaced repetition where you are constantly working on words, these same words every single day. And these words are also
Okay.
customized to how well you can remember them. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the app, but there's an app called Anki, which uses a spaced repetition system and where if you keep on getting words correct, you do them less often. The more incorrect you get it,
Right.
the more often you do it. So, and that the emphasis
Right.
is that you do this every single day so that you have cards to do every single day. And it stacks up, right? Once you're at like 100 words, you're gonna have to do like 50 cards a day, and it's hard work because you're doing active recall. Active recall is pushing yourself to kind of make sure you remember this word rather than just having it heard it once. If you can't active recall, you don't actually understand it. This is kind of something that's often used as a Feynman technique, where you have information and you have to output it again to get it structured and solidified in your brain. It's kind of the same idea of active recall and the words you use. That's an
Okay.
Anki process.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to get into more of that. There's tons of resources that are on YouTube, but the more efficient way to go about it is not just to do the Anki because it's really hard to ingrain words in your head just through vocab training with the Hindi word and then the definition. That's really hard to get actually solidified in the brain. Like you're not going to know the context where how to
Exactly.
actually use it.
I
So
agree.
you want to do a lot
For
of
sure.
coupling with immersion.
Okay.
So and this the beginning is the really hard part because you're going to be doing these flashcards. You're doing like 5 a day, so you know barely any words, and then you're doing this immersion, and there's everything you don't understand. So it was going to be incredibly hard. So
Yeah.
at that point in time,
And
that's why there's like a balance between what you do, but there's still always that balance. You're still doing both of them. So in the beginning, I recommend just being
right.
focusing more on vocab, really trying to work it up to like 100 words, 200 words, and only do like maybe 30 minutes immersing every day. You can do even less. But then as you get to the 200 point, you're going to start having a little more understanding of it. You're going to see the word pop up in your immersion, and it's going to be a little bit better
Right.
for you to actually start balancing out. And at a certain point, when you get to really high level, like for me in Japanese, when I got to like 2,000 words, I just completely stopped using Anki.
Right.
At that point, your spaced repetition
Mm.
comes from immersion. And that's the reason is
Right.
that is because the words that you really don't know are gonna be well, it's just like immersing itself.
Like
This is how we
nuanced
learn languages
words.
as babies, right? And as humans right now.
Right.
We hear these words so often in repetition that it's kind of hard to forget it. And the words that are like extra
Uh-huh.
rare, we still hear in repetition, but they're still hard to get. Um, but if you just do purely immersion every single day as its form of spaced repetition, you're still practicing that spaced repetition because you're still doing that every single day. The words are popping up every so once in a while, and that works in itself. But in the beginning stages, it's kind of hard
Okay.
to do that. It's more easy to do the straightforward way. And then you have the grammar as well,
No.
which you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Your question.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I have two questions actually. So first is a pretty simple question. Like at 800 words, right? Knowing 800 words, what like what level does that put you in? Does that put you in like a first grader understanding? I mean, obviously it differ per language, but on average, on average, what would that put you in? Like a first grader's understanding of a language or like a kindergartner's level? Do you know the statistic off the top of your head?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'm just double checking to make sure. I think 800 words gives you around 80% of the language,
Okay.
but let
And
me
then
make
you're
sure.
saying that the other 20% or the other like 20% of the language, um, you'll obviously just like use the 80 the other 80% to um kind of like create those kind of let you memorize those other definitions, right? Of those other words. It'll like set the stage for memorizing
Mm,
new words, right?
mm.
Okay. And
Yeah,
then
wait, no, I
my
didn't say
the
yes. I
really
didn't say
why
yes. I'm just acknowledging you. I'm just acknowledging you. I didn't say yes. I'll
oh,
answer
okay,
that in a
okay.
second. Yeah. You have a
Yeah,
question?
you can answer that first.
Okay. So first of
Yeah,
all,
the other question
I
was
just searched
different.
it up. The statistic is that 800, the most common words, should allow you to understand approximately 75% of everyday conversations. So a little
Okay.
more specific is 75% in everyday conversations, not like research scientific
Right.
things. So that's a huge
Right.
amount. But the reality is that still after 70%, you're still not going to understand those sentences because if you don't understand a word or two, that's still going to throw it all off. But understanding a good
Right.
base is really good. So to answer your second question, yes, that's going to start happening, but you still are still going to rely heavily on vocab just because there's still so much you don't
Okay.
understand. So 75% is still too little. I would say around, for me, it was around, but I'm also like very, I want to like fully get a huge foundation before I start doing the immersion only. So for me, it was around like
Right.
97%. 97, that's quite a
Okay.
lot. But I think for
How
other
many
people,
words
you
is
can do
that?
around like 92%. 97 was around like 2000. Like, that's when I switched around. 2000,
Okay,
3000
I
around.
see.
And that's a lot. That was like one and a half years of doing that space repetition at like 5 cards a day.
Okay.
Yeah. So that,
Yeah, and then yeah, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. Go.
Oh no, I was just gonna say like really why I'm here is that I was just interested into seeing how like how would you like let's say you wanted to go back in time and create your own app, something that uses best of like immersion, best of Anki, spaced repetition, and all these things that you used to facilitate your language learning growth and bring it and consolidate it into one app, right? How would you do that? And what features would you prioritize highly? Which features would you what do you think are like nice to haves? What do you think are completely useless? And yeah, like how would you really what I'm trying to understand is how could like what features are important?
Yeah, that's a fantastic
Because I'm
question.
trying to develop like an app myself, right? If I wanted
Yeah.
to, like I don't know if I will, but if I wanted to, what would I prioritize in creating? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
This is like probably gonna be the second part of what I was going to talk about. Um,
Sure.
this is just about in general. There's so many different types of techniques you can go about in language learning, rather than like in the specific like day to day what you'd be doing. So in my time,
Uh-huh.
when I studied Japanese, I was using a lot of tools too. And these are like a lot of
Okay.
tools that you would never see in a language classroom. So I think, in answer to your question, a combination of all the tools I use would be very good, and I'll explain that right now. So one of the biggest ones that was the most influential for me was something called Morphin. It was where everything I watched, everything I immersed in, I could extract all the dialogue into my Anki, which is the memorization flashcards, and I could learn all the vocabulary in that specific piece of immersion so I can fully understand that piece of immersion while learning all those words in context. So that you can, I don't know if you can just hear how useful that might sound, but that was incredibly useful for it.
Okay.
But that's just one tool, right? And then there's many others I use, which were like, and then you look at that tool was also pretty annoying to use because you have to do this whole process of downloading the movies and putting them in, putting the dialogue in, and then you export it out to this third party software on Key to
Okay.
actually
So
use the cards.
so just to clarify, right? So Morphum or Morphium or whatever that tool was,
Morphman,
right?
yeah, Morphman.
It Morphman. Okay. Um, it asks you to upload your own like MP4 file or like some sort of something with visual and audio.
So yeah. You'd upload the video file, which
Okay.
you put into the software. You also might have to
Right.
extract the subtitles, so you put that in separately, and then that would
So you
automatically
have to
create,
also find captions.
yeah, and then
Okay.
you would have to put that, and then it would give you, it would compose in the form of the Anki files, flashcards which contain one frame for that line of dialogue, and then the line of dialogue itself. And then so what I did is I had that frame of
One
that line of
frame.
dialogue itself,
Okay.
and then I would put it into my Anki, and then there's more customizations I could do here.
And what were those
Sorry.
customizations?
The application I just mentioned was called Substitute RSRS. That's a whole different thing, actually. That's the thing that converts the files to the video files to the Anki files. The thing I'm talking about, the
Okay.
Morphman thing I'm talking about now, is the software I use within Anki to actually, oh my, it's a whole complicated thing within Anki to actually learn the vocabulary I don't know. So what Morphman did was that it knew a base of what I already knew. And it knew that from it
Okay.
tagged the previous okay, oh, those is so complicated. It tagged the previous cards that I do know. So for example, what Morphin does is it takes every single one of these new files I have, right, with the one line and the picture, and it puts the unknown words into the vocabulary box. Unknown words is just the words that it doesn't see that I have done on my any
So
of the
is
other cards.
right. And is Morphman uh like an upgraded version of space repetition or like what exactly is this a different version of space repetition or how does that
No,
work?
this is within Anki. It's an add-on. It's an
Yeah.
add-on that just
Right.
manipulates the cards and
Okay.
allows you to know what cards you know and know what vocab words you know, what vocab words you don't know, so you can study the ones you don't know. So I'm going to finish. I'm going to fully explain kind of how more thing works so you can have understanding. And then, remind me, really I haven't really used Morphin in 2 years, so I'm actively recalling how to use it. So the vocab, every single word you don't know is put into a vocab box. And
Okay.
what it does is that it tries to find you lines and where you know and where you don't know only one card. So for example, in the sentence, English sentence, I eat apples. If I didn't know apples, but I knew everything else, it would give me a card that had the vocab field apples. And then that give me the sentence and give me the picture so you can see everything there nice and clean. And once you would do that
But
card, it would make that card
mhm.
known. So it would give it a tag called
Okay.
known. And then that makes it so that every single other card that contains that word now has apples as known, and then it could change the vocab field so that if you had a sentence like "I eat apples for fun," but you didn't know the word "fun," originally that would have vocab. It would have apples and fun in it. Now you change it. Now it only has fun. Now you can do that card now, and you learn more words. So it goes like that. It does that process over and over and over again until you basically just study all the vocabulary in that piece of immersion, and you do it in a way where you have something called I+1, which is known plus one unknown. So that's the best way to learn it in these vocab words because you're learning it in
You're using active recall
no
too.
no. You're doing it in a sense that you're comfortable with every single other word other than that, but that one unknown word is just the outlier. So it gives you good context of how to understand that word. Maybe you can
But
even
you also
compare.
have to know the other words too, right?
Yeah, you
The
have
other
another
words
other
that you
words. That's
didn't
called
know.
I+1. Yeah,
So you have to recall
known
those.
plus one
Okay.
unknown. Yeah, so that
Right.
way of doing it is very good in terms. That's what they call the sentence mining, where they got sentences where they knew everything except for one word, and that they could study that one word. So it's very helpful. That's what I did
Right.
for all 3,000
And
of my vocab. But
and also, but you can't when you start off, right? First, so the procedure goes that you first learn individual vocabulary words, right? And
yeah,
that you use spaced repetition, which is a different way of it's a way of presenting cards that you don't know, so that you can learn more efficiently. And also presents cards that you aren't that comfortable with to also help you remember those words most efficiently, right? So that's separate from what Morphman, how Morphman presents cards, right? But at the end of the day, both of them are presenting cards differently. Is that correct?
I'm gonna cut you right there. No, that's not right. So there's this whole thing is under Anki, and Anki is spaced
Right, it is
repetition.
on.
Morphman,
Yeah,
all it does is that it just like changes the fields of these cards, and then it changes what you're actually studying. And once Morphman is done, for example, once Morphman is done, you'll still have your 5 new cards to study every single day.
hmm
But Morphman chooses which one you're studying that day. And then you do those 5 cards. If you get them all right, you do them tomorrow. Tomorrow, if you do those 5 cards right again, you do them in 6 days. It's the same process of spatial repetition. Morphman's not doing anything to change that process. It's just choosing the cards that's actually
right.
giving to you so you can learn it in a more systematic way. So they're separate
But
things,
if I'm,
but you're still doing
yeah,
this under spatial repetition. They're both spaced
right.
repetition. They're
And
both the same algorithm.
just to clarify, I thought spaced repetition was a way of presenting cards, was an order in which you present cards to maximize learning. Isn't that what spaced repetition is?
Order and when you represent cards from that size learning. It's the spaced repetition is the manipulation
Because
of the timing of giving you cards so that you can learn it the most efficiently. You memorize it the most
right, and
efficiently.
Morphman, and you said Morphman uses a different type of. I don't know whether you said different, but you said that Morphman presents cards based on if you only don't know one word, right? That's when it presents that card. But isn't spaced repetition different where it uh like at the end of the day, where how the time that it takes to the time between learning new cards is still in order, right? Like, are is that true?
What do you mean?
The time that we spend, like, let's say you have card A, B, C, and D, okay? Now, spaced repetition tells you on your first iteration, okay? So I open up Anki for the first time, and spaced repetition, the algorithm will present you card A, then it'll present you card B, then C, and D, right? And that's your first session, let's say, right? And then on your next go, it presents you the same cards again, but then based on how comfortable you are with it, it'll present some cards less frequently and some cards more frequently, right? And also at the same time introduce new cards. Is that correct?
Yes. So what do you think Morphman does?
Okay. Now, I'm saying that Morphman does like let's say Morphman does A presents A, B, C, and D, right? On the first go, right?
Yeah.
All assuming that you only know one word, right?
Okay. I'm gonna cut you right there.
That
No.
only you only don't know one word.
So no. That's just no, okay. That's not how it works. So we'll go back to the example of
Can you
the
use
AB.
that analogy with the
Yeah,
four
ABCD. I use
ABCD?
I use ABCD.
Excellent.
Yeah. So say it ABCD. Right? Space repetition itself does not care for which order it's doing the cards in, right? For all it matters, you can
Right,
do the B
exactly.
first, you can do C first, you can do D first, you can do A first. Space repetition is just the fact that you're timing the cards in intervals depending on how well you know it. That's all it is. Okay, so what Morphman
Okay.
does is it chooses the order of the cards it gives you.
But the
So,
spacing is still determined by spaced repetition, the other
yes,
algorithm.
yes,
Okay, so it's a combination of things. It's
combination.
not like
It's
two
combination.
different algorithms.
No, it's
Okay,
combination things. That's why these are two different things.
okay.
Like there's actually three.
Right,
There's three different systems happening here, right? You can actually, no, there's only two systems at work, but there's like multiple softwares which are using to help it like work together. So those are
right,
the two
right. Forget about
chunks
the
of
software,
things.
just in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
right. It just comes to down to order and spacing,
yeah.
correct?
Yeah. In
Okay.
terms of
Okay,
Morphman and
now I
Anki
understand.
working together. Yeah. So
Right, so then
you
yeah,
hold on.
continue.
So the combination of those two provided very good efficient learning because I was learning vocabulary that was
Right,
present in the immersion I was using. And so that when I would be studying that vocab every single day and getting it to like really solid understanding levels, when I would watch that immersion again, not only would I understand the words, but that's only the first half, understanding that the words you're seeing, you're practicing in the Anki are actually being reflected on immersion. It's only the first half. The second half is seeing how those words play within context, play within grammar, right? Playing within grammar is huge. If you don't know how to use grammar with the words, you're not going to create sentences. But seeing how they work within grammar is very
okay.
good. And seeing within actual uses of grammar is different than seeing it within textbook use of grammar, right? The way we learn in classes that we're very used to is we're supposed to create sentence through algorithms, through set
Okay,
methods that are already like put in place. That's not fact. That's not true, right? Language is messy. There's things all over the place. They're not always going to follow the rules. And a lot of the mechanics of the language itself is not always going to be that straightforward. So learning grammar and trying to
okay.
use language in a set, really set logical ways is never going to work. You always kind of, there's many people who said this before, but everything you output should be something that you've inputted before. You're never going to be saying something that you have never heard before because that it's just going to come off unnatural or you hit like a really lucky 1% guess. Okay, sometimes it happens to me. Most of the time, it doesn't work. So you always want to hear something before you do it. So having the vocab you are studying that be used in sentences, you can see how it works. Then you can actually that begins the levels that begins the slow pace up to when you're actually going to be able to read the output. So that whole process
Mhm.
itself is very efficient. The fact that I'm learning the vocab that I'm watching, right? Very good. And then the other part was grammar studies, right? Grammar studies was a supplement that allowed me to understand kind of more of how everything plays together. It's not completely necessary, but it's a very good supplement. So in terms of creating an app, right? You want to come. I think the best thing is you want a combination of all these aspects of where you're having vocab studies, but you're also having a very relevant immersion that you are studying with your vocab. You never have them separate. If you're learning vocab that never sees an immersion, you're gonna forget that so quickly. You're not gonna understand how it works with the context. You're just gonna have like no sense of it in your head. And there's just this weird phenomenon that happens, especially with me, in that as soon as I see a word I'm studying show up in a show or show up in immersion, the word sticks so much better in my head. It's like it makes
Okay.
sense now, right? I like understand the why this word exists, how you can use it, everything, a more painted full color image. If you just memorize it, it's just like memorizing gibberish. I tell you, memorize like right? Tell you that right now, you're not gonna have no clue where it fits in anywhere. It's complete rubbish. It's
Mhm.
like you don't understand. But if you see it in a language that actually has sense within a
Right.
sentence, some feelings, some emotions, a place, an image in your head, right? It puts the image
Right.
it makes the meaning so much more clear. So I'm just emphasizing that the important connection between immersion and vocabulary being very connected. And then so having that being connected and having that you learn the vocab that you don't know and I plus one manner is also very important, very effective because you have the context around that
Right.
one word that can allow you to learn it. That's also incredibly important. Um, and then the space repetition idea, right? Having to make sure you space repetition, you're doing that Um, Also very important because you want to make sure you're memorizing the words in an effective way. That's also very important.
Right.
And everything really important. And then the
Now,
grammar too, something that is kind of less important, but it's still very good for supplementing and
mhm.
expediting learning. You can theoretically learn a language completely like just by doing the just by doing immersion stuff. Like you can do that itself. That helps a lot with vocab studies. But
Okay.
um, having the grammar to help supplement is also important. But it matters more in I would say matter like the timing of when you give out grammar is also pretty. I would say like it can make it a lot more smooth, a lot more rough. So
Okay.
that's like the efficient times. But I haven't mentioned. I just want to briefly before you ask your question. Before you ask your question,
Yeah,
I
sure.
want to briefly mention reading, right? Especially if it's a language that has scriptures. I'm not really sure about Hindi, but like Japanese, Chinese, Arabic, they all have scriptures, and it makes it hard to read and actually do the flashcards. So that's a big hurdle in terms of what if you can't read the language? How do you supposed to read the flashcards? So then you have to learn the language, learn the how to read the language. That's this whole separate thing. So for the sake of this, right, I'm not going to talk about how to read the language. I'm assuming we're learning like a romance language. But if you're trying to read the language, it's a whole separate thing, and where there's this whole feud between if you should focus on listening first or reading first, which was more important. That's this whole other topic. We can talk about it later if you want to, because that'll be pretty relevant for your app if you want to try to implement like Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, or any of that.
Yeah.
We can talk about it later if you want. So,
Mhm.
what's your question?
Yeah, no, I was just trying to summarize the entire workflow again. So, to start from the top, right? You said choose the first 800 most frequently used words, right, in everyday conversation, and there are lists for that, correct?
Yeah, most languages have that. Yeah.
Okay. So then once you've chosen the first 800, right? Then the first step is you have to use because you can't use Morphman immediately, right? So you have to use like just Anki, put those words into Anki and just straight memorize using spaced repetition, which Anki provides, correct?
Yeah.
And when do you realize that when do you kind of stop that and start Morphman though?
And after you've done 800 words, so the 800 most frequently words
All
said
800
words.
words.
Yeah, because you're gonna hear
Right.
them over and over again, anyways. Right. So
Okay.
the thing is, you can do theoretically Morphman from the very beginning, but it'll be a lot more messy because Morphman is like giving you these
But it
weird.
presents the first, yeah,
So
but it won't work though because Morphman uses where it only presents a card where you only don't know one word,
yeah,
right? But like in
what
a sentence, you
you're
won't know
forgetting
a
that
lot of words.
you're forgetting those short phrases and where like the main character is only saying like one word. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So
like literally one case words.
for
Okay.
example, right? Some of the commonly said words in a language can be like the particles, like in the case of like Japanese, or like in the case of English, you can just use like what, right? A lot of times you're just gonna have a
Okay.
simple what in a sentence, like what, right? So more kind of present you that. But if you're trying to learn
Right.
like the most 800 basic words and you're using Morphin for that, you're gonna get a lot of weird context like sentences. But if you use like a set already created a list and set flashcards that give you the 800 most frequently words said words and better contexts, they can help a little bit. But you can definitely use Morphin at the very beginning to learn all the frequently said words. Like, but the whole point, okay, the other alternative right, is that you learn the 800 words from a pre created deck. And doing that
Okay.
is just better because you have better context for the words you're doing. But you can most definitely do it with Morphline as well. It's the same idea. You're still learning the words anyways. Either way.
Okay. And these preset decks, like what exactly is preset about them? Is it like catered towards like one like movie for instance or one or like what exactly is this preset decks?
Yeah. So they're
How do they
just
categorize them?
so they're usually very beginner orientated because they're the first
Okay.
800
So
words.
just
So
right.
they make
Okay.
it so that so it depends on the deck, depending on the creator. Some just have a simple vocab and definition, but also some other ones that
Right.
I like more have context. So they have maybe a full sentence, maybe a full
Mhm.
like movie scene that you can understand what word is being used. And so those
Okay.
pre-created decks are often just for the beginners to use.
Okay. So, once again, like just to get that workflow going again, 800 most frequently words. I'm just gonna say just using that list instead of preset lists decks, and then putting them into Anki using spaced repetition, and then from there starting Morphman after 800 words, like after you become proficient in those. And how do you know you're proficient? Like, does Anki tell you?
No, you're never proficient at anything. Um, Language is also
Okay,
very
but you
incredibly
said
hard to teach.
start Morphman
So what
after 800
happens is that
words.
once you're what I mean by you're finished with it is that you're doing like 5 cards every day, right? Or how many ever you want to do every day. By the
Right.
time you run out of cards to do, you just have to move on to Morphin. That's how it works. So say you do 5 cards a day,
Okay.
after 80 days, you have to move on to Morphin because you have no more cards to do. Or
Okay.
you can just stop completely, like
Um,
you just
okay. And then after you're starting Morphman, and then uh these Morphman decks are like these sentences that Morphman uses, right? Where are these sentences from? They're from the subs 2RS thing?
they're from the immersion that you decide to watch.
Okay. And what type of how would you go about choosing immersions?
Oh, like the kind of content you're watching.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's also a good question. There's a good blend between having it being something you like versus being something that's easy enough or the level that it should be for you to actually understand it. So they're both
Okay.
very, very, very important. On the one hand, right, if you have something that you don't like, you're not going to want to watch it, and especially in the beginning stages, you're going to have to watch a piece of content multiple times to actually ingrain everything being said
Right.
in there and understand all the concepts and stuff like
Mhm.
that. On the other hand,
Mhm.
um, but sometimes the fun things, right, are the harder things to watch that have like
Okay.
more dialogue and stuff like that. So on the other hand, right, if your content is too hard to understand, there's too many big words, there's too much fast pace, the context is too hard to understand. Like especially if you're watching like there's like some crazy like sci-fi stuff you choose to be watching. That's like really hard for beginner to understand. So a lot of times they recommend watching like children's show, like cartoons and children's show that are just easy to understand. They're meant for children anyways. But a lot of times those are boring, right? So you kind of want to find something that is easy but also engaging to watch.
Okay.
So for me, I watched a slice of life anime. That was my first one to begin with.
Okay.
It was a very
Yeah,
very
yeah.
very easy one, but it was also very interesting.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Okay. So yeah, so you get the sentences from the sub 2RS, put them in Morphman, Morphman generates those, and then how long do you do Morphman for? Is that just the constant, like always learning? Like
Yep.
when did you stop Morphman again?
Yeah.
2000
Two
words, you
two
said?
thousand words. So
Oh
that was done
no,
after
you
one
said
and
that
a
was
half years. 2,000, 3,000 words.
okay.
It's after like 1.5 years, 2 years, 1.5, 2 years. But
Okay.
it's to a point where you think that immersion can handle all of the rest of your vocabulary, and where you don't have to constantly spend that time every day doing that vocab repetition because you already feel confident that you're getting it from immersion. So that can be at various points in your journey. It doesn't have to be necessarily this fixed number. It's all up to your own choice. Like, and I think another big mistake people make is that they follow too fixed of a journey that is preset from either teachers, apps, or anything. They have to realize that this whole thing is their own choice, their own thing, and they're also very different than other people. So like go about your own intuition in terms of what you want to do.
Right,
So
obviously, but I
yeah,
mean, based on experience, some things cause are more efficient than others. Like
yeah.
obviously you would know, you know what I'm saying? Like these are obviously guidelines. They're not set in stone
But
requirements necessarily.
also the weird thing though is that as I've I've come across a lot of other language learners as I've done this process,
Right.
is that I figured out there's so
Okay.
many different methods that work for each person, and that not every single thing
Right.
that
That's
I
true.
do will work for everyone else. When I tried teaching my methods to everyone in my club, only a few accepted it and it worked for them. The other people use completely different methods that I was actually like, detesting at that time. So the other methods like that are very popular are just completely just output, 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 output. So like a huge level, and we're just talking so much
Okay.
that you're just learning that much faster. But that also requires a huge base of immersion, though, like a huge base of vocab and actually fundamentals of the language stuff. So I mean, I guess,
Okay.
but like, well, you know what I'm saying? Right? Like my method is like super, like it's my method especially is very effective oriented. I want to get rid of all gaps in terms of ambiguities and the inefficiencies of language learning. But it's also not the thing
Okay.
that everyone would want to use, right? Some people just enjoy learning more from the textbook. Some people just enjoy like just being out there in the country and learning the language that way and talking to people. So it's completely up to the person. I think my approach is for the
Right.
very like like efficient orientated, pragmatic, get this in the best way possible kind of thinker, yeah, kind of a
Okay. Okay. And I guess when do you start grammar too? Like your
grammar.
just based on your methods.
You would start. I would say you start learning the fundamentals very early on, like as you're learning
Okay.
the very first words you have. But the more complicated stuff you can save as you begin to learn grammar more, but begin to immerse more. So this kind of thing I was talking about, like in the perfect app, right? The spread of grammar is also important, but you have to be kind of meticulous in where you give it. So like the fundamentals can be given out at the beginning, but the more complicated advanced stuff should be given out later after they've been more emerging, after they have more vocab build up. Yeah, I think an app that would
Okay.
can like there's actually huge potential for this, but there's also a lot of there's already there's a lot of software out there already that kind of does the kind of the half of the problem
Bits and
of
pieces
language
of it.
learning, the bits
Yeah.
and pieces of it. But there's not a single one that has combined every single one of them. And I think that's for a good reason. I think it's a very hard thing to do in the first place. And
Right.
well, I mean, I don't know if it's really that hard, but it's also not that much of probably like it's also a hard thing to advertise and monetize and there's a lot of things, but I think there's huge potential for it if you're gonna get it to be a very good level. Yeah.
Right.
Do,
Okay. Yeah,
do you
so
want me to go
then
over like
after like 2000, yeah,
do you want me to go over
go
like a
ahead.
kind of rough idea of like the perfect app I would envision if it would like follow my
Yeah,
method?
that's exactly what I wanted to hear from the beginning.
Oh,
Okay, yeah, just go ahead.
well, I was giving you the background because you understand otherwise. Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
maybe I
Yeah.
should have said it in the beginning and I just explain after. But yeah, it's chill, whatever. Okay, but the perfect app, and also I only kind of really thought of this now after I explained everything to you. So I don't know. I guess yeah. All right, so the perfect app would be like you choose a language you want to learn. Let's say it's Spanish, okay, to get rid of all the scripture problems because that's a whole other jumble of jumble. So you pick
Okay.
Spanish, and then it begins you with just starting to learn maybe the first 30 words. So you do like 10 words a day. And 10 words a day,
Okay.
30 20 words, 30 a week. On the first 3 days, okay, I'm going very specific now because I'm just giving kind of an idea about what's on my mind. The first 3 days, you
Yeah,
get
no,
like
no, no.
10 minutes of very easy immersion. Right? This is all given to you, super easy. There's no resistance. When there's no resistance, it makes it so much easier. For me, like when I have to put myself out there, not put myself out there, but like search like web meticulously for all these small pieces of immersion, the good things I use in the beginning, just annoying. I give up pretty quickly. But in the beginning, right?
Now,
If you're given this like so the first day even, right? Learn 10 words. And you watch some very like specifically cater picked videos that contain those 10 words and very easy content. So you can see how they're already used in the immersion. Right? Perfect.
okay.
Second day, same thing again. 10 new words in no immersion. Third day, same thing. Maybe a little bit of grammar this time, right?
10 new words
Like
and reviewing, right?
yeah, you're still reviewing. So for example, look like you probably do 10 words a day and you probably have so you have 20 in the days before, right? You probably let's say that you solidify 10, you would only have to do like 10 for review. So the 10 new cards, 10 review. But this stacks up really quickly. So I would say down the line later, you would only do
Right.
5 new cards a day because it's an exponential growth over time. So you
Right.
also spend a lot of time doing these cards. Like sometimes it spends up to like 1 hour or 2 hours doing the cards if you're doing a huge workload, like 10 new cards a day.
Right.
So that's why you recommend for consistency doing less cards. So on the third day, right, you get also 10 new vocab words. you learn a little bit of grammar, like you learn the very foundational grammar, like what type of structure is it? Is it object? Is it subject, object, verb, subject, verb, object? What type of like how do you? What's the basic like ways it works? And so you learn that in the first third day, and then you watch more immersion, right? And then over time, as it picks up, right, you do less. You can probably do less new cards a day, and then more immersion, and over you get really advanced times. You'd be like after like 200 days, you'd probably be still at like 5 new cards a day, but you'd be watching like probably like 31 hour long of videos. And at this point, you're getting a really good foundation, right? Now, remember all the things you're learning and all the vocab you're learning, or all the things you're seeing in the vocab at all times. And like, I think this is probably where a good time where AI also comes to help if you can generate videos that contain all the words you know, right? And there's just huge potential of
Mhm.
things you can do with AI to make it even more efficient in where you're purely learning the cards that you're studying and the grammar you're studying too. And in the videos that it's crazy entertaining. It's up to your personal taste. And this also gets pretty scary too. Like if you think about if AI can generate stuff like that, where everything is catered to your taste specifically and catered to the efficiency.
Right.
But yeah, AI has tremendous potential for language learning. I think that's a huge thing. I think like you have to get on top of that. If like the perfect idea of language learning comes from AI. But anyways, so at a certain point, as you get more advanced, you would be having already this really great foundation of vocabulary. Maybe you have like 800 words already, and you have this really good foundation of how it works and interplays and immersion because you've seen it all. But you still wouldn't be able to
Okay.
necessarily make advanced sentences because you still don't know the big words. So at this point in time, right, you still be learning about vocab, doing a lot of immersion. You start to learn more advanced vocab. I mean, sorry, more advanced grammar, um, so that you would already have seen what kind of grammar is kind of familiarized. And once they're familiarized and you're actually learning them, it's a lot easier to understand and learn at that point in time because it's not completely unknown to you. So learning grammar, more advanced grammar at that point in time, at that space. Okay. And okay, Spanish is also easier, so it might not take actually as much time to learn. But let's say you're very, very advanced now. At the very, very advanced levels, you don't have to learn, like probably like do no vocabs a day, just do pure immersion, and you're chill. That's like the endpoint. I don't have to use the app anymore. But yeah, that's kind of the best app I would say there is. I think it relies heavily on AI, and I think that it's very hard to do without AI unless you're manually finding all the immersion that mixes with all the words that you're finding. That's a lot of work. Very annoying. But that would be the perfect app. That's what I would like. I'm a very like efficient, but get the most I can get the most efficient thing I can out of the thing I'm doing. So that's kind of why I really gravitate towards Morphman and Anki, even though those are kind of less unorthodox approaches, because and they're also casinos like pretty nerd, like almost nerdy kind of things, because they're like the most efficient. I think that's as far as I could have gone in the present day in terms of efficiency. But if we were to go a level further, I think we'll definitely use aspects of AI to help do that. As well as you
Okay.
also like kind of got a
Um,
side mention like in terms of practicing output, that's the whole other thing. Output is not the same as input. In terms of practicing output, there's also like you talk to chat GPT and all. Like it's pretty crazy, but that's also be
mhm.
helpful. Yeah. And then
So
also
potential to
sorry,
like
one
speak
more
with
thing.
somebody.
I haven't mentioned
Yeah, go
output
ahead.
at all yet, but in general, once you get enough input, you can start practicing output. Input comes for output, but you can also start output whenever you want. But in general, you gotta have input for output. But start output whenever you want, basically. There are people who say start output very, very late after you ever like fully understand input. There's also people who are advocates of starting very, very early. Like I'll give you an example. Matt versus Japan started very, very late, like 10 years after 10 years of input, start talking. But like you guys might know Xiao Mai, Chinese guy in China, Xiao Mai, New York City. He started very, very early, and he advocates
Okay.
for starting very early. So just kind of figure out your output pace, go whenever you want, but you have that input in the beginning, anyways.
I see. Yeah, I mean, one last thing that I wanted to end off with was, what are your thoughts on like creating preset like decks based on analyzing the captions that people say in like let's say I'm watching a movie, okay? And I analyze the movie, find the most common words from the movie, and then before watching the movie, maybe like a day or 2 before, or maybe a little bit more before, but, maybe like 3 days before, I start prepping by learning material, learning those vocabulary words, and then once I get even if I don't get to even like 50% of what the movie like the most common words that the movie uses, then I learn while watching the movie. What are your thoughts on that? And then after that, I'd practice, the words, and when I watch, like, a new movie, I analyze another movie, and then I add it to the deck that I already created, and then practice those words, and then you see what I'm saying? What are your thoughts
So
on that process? I
don't
mean,
learn
it's
all the
completely different.
vocab from one movie, but just do it gradually as you watch more movies.
Yeah, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay.
Obviously,
One
as you said, it's different per person. Yeah? I was just gonna say it's different per person, and somebody the way one person learns is different from the another. And what are your thoughts? Do you think that this is even a viable strategy that somebody could potentially use?
I think anything you do in regards to immersing is a valuable strategy. Some are just better
Okay.
for some are just yeah, I mean depending on the person, but I'll say what worked for me in a bit. But I do want to mention, for one more thing, Morphnet also uses frequency counts to pick out the words. So it not only
Right.
chooses words that you don't know, it also chooses words that are commonly said, so you're not learning very rare words. Okay, I just want to point it out. Okay, in terms of what your question is, I want to rephrase it just to make sure I completely understand it. You're saying that you don't
Yeah.
spend the time on one piece of immersion, learning everything in there, but rather you do it over multiple.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, I'm saying don't even start with the 800 most frequently, right? Just let's say that you don't even start with that, and let's say that I'm gonna say, okay, listen, I want to watch a movie, right? And then I analyze that movie and then create flashcards out of it, then pick out the like 50 most common words, learn those common words, then like let's say I do it for a week and then or throughout the week and then on Saturday I watch that movie. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I spend learning. Then on Saturday I watch that movie. Okay? Then during the movie, obviously I'm taking whatever I learned and actually seeing it in action, right? And then Sunday, I plan out a new movie, right? And I analyze that. Then once again, I can still review the words that I already learned, those top 50 words, and, then I analyze a new movie, add those to the deck, then I take the frequency of the previous movie, then take the frequency of this movie, like the word frequency in this movie, take the top 50 of both, um, probably, like, there should be some sort of weight, like, obviously, the new movies, like, you're watching, a new movie, you wanna learn, like, the words in that movie, so you can, like, weight the new movie's words more compared to the previous, and then learn top 50 words total, for both movies, and then you will practice those throughout the week, and then Saturday, watch that movie again, watch another movie, that same movie that you prepped on Sunday. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, it just sounds like it's getting complicated. I would say
Yeah, I mean,
it
everything is
was
complicated here, right?
yeah, it was all okay until you said take the top 50 weighted. Okay, so I'll tell you why that's bad.
Okay,
Eventually, okay, in the beginning stages, it's okay because anyways, these words are going to show up anyway
okay,
because they're so frequent. But if you're doing more harder,
right.
rarer words, like I was doing in my later stages, if you start learning from the movie you watched before that you're not planning to watch again, so you're learning words that you're just never going to see really get in action or just right soon
I
away,
mean, you
right?
still learn them.
So
It's like every day, right? They're like still everyday language, everyday words.
okay, I'm saying at a very high level. In the beginning, yes, that's fine, whatever, because you're here so often.
Oh,
But
yeah, yeah. No, for high level, it's different, but just like
but still,
in the beginning, that's what I'm saying.
I don't understand why you would do that though. Like I understand why you could hop between movies, or you can get bored. You don't want to fully. So my method is that I went extreme on one thing, right? So I studied all the words I could on this one thing, of like 300
Okay.
words. So by the time I finished, I could see every single word being played in that movie. And I could feel like I actually gained growth and accomplishment over time of how I went from not understanding anything that's in the show to understanding a lot of what's happening in the show, or like a good amount of what's happening in the show. That
Right.
was pretty big for me. But you can also do your approach and where you do a little bit from this show, see how it works, and then learn more from this show, see how that works. And then, but you don't want to, I don't recommend, why would you go back to the previous one and learn the words from there when you're not going to watch it again? You want to see the words you are studying used right away. Otherwise, it's going to fade away really quickly. Remember, we're talking about the context thing, right? If you don't
Okay.
have it in the context, you're going to lose it really quickly. So I don't understand you would go
I
back into
see.
that. I also like, unless you're like so bored and like you're already losing interest in the content you're watching, it just it's more clear cut to just go all the way with one show, just because it's also good to also like repeating content is very important. Listening to it multiple times because you
Okay.
miss things so many times, especially when you don't understand the language. And so it's very important to just go
Okay.
back and back and back and back and back and forth and learn those things. Just like how you can learn a word right
Okay.
now and a word is in a sentence by just keep on saying it every single day and hearing that sentence over and over again. Same thing with um with repeating shows. But it's not rote memorization in a sense. It's just like hearing the nuances and the details, seeing all those things plays out in that one show you're watching. As well as I think the accomplishment is also a
Mhm.
big thing too. Right? If you feel that you've actually made significant progress, it gives you a lot of encouragement to continue doing more. At least for me, that's how it
Right,
was.
I mean, but that I mean, well, I told you, right? Like, if I'm watching, like, Hindi movies, right, I like watching them, so, it's not a matter of, like, you don't need as much, like, "Oh, I'm making progress," to keep continuing, like, doing immersion or keep continuing trying to learn that language. You understand? But I
Yeah,
yeah, it is
like
important, for sure. I agree with you.
your process works completely fine as well. Like I said, everyone works differently. Um, I
Right.
um, but in general, I would also just say in the beginning, especially, I feel like language learning and watching immersion is not the same thing as enjoying the medium itself, right? So I can go
Okay.
about like when I try learning Korean, right? When I watched the K drama in English subtitles, it was entertaining. I was having fun. When I try doing it as immersion, it's a strenuous process. You have to be very highly focused. You can get bored
Mhm.
really quickly because you're not understanding things. So I think in your approach, you're misunderstanding the fact that you feel like you're going to be having a lot of fun while learning Hindi from the very
Okay.
beginning because you're watching stuff that you're entertained by, but you're not entertained because you have no idea what's happening, even if the context is happening, right? But especially it depends on the show, right? Children's show like a lot of animation makes it a little more easy. But if watching like shows that have a lot of dialogue, it's gonna be a lot harder to actually understand what's happening, and that's not gonna make it. It's not gonna make it enjoyable. So that's why also for me, I understood that it was kind of more of a work that I had to do rather than it being enjoyable. So I put myself to work on that one show, even though repetition was boring, you know. But that's kind of how it felt for me. So like I wouldn't have enjoyed it any
Okay.
more if I went with any other show. I would have been kind of mad at myself for not sticking out with that one show to complete it because I had that mindset of like
Right.
finishing one thing for you to the next. So that's also completely me, right? So it depends completely on the person, but I think a lot
Okay.
of this can be alleviated after you just try for yourself and see what works for you.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Right,
it
right.
really just depends upon the person. Yeah.
Alright. Well,
Does that answer your
thank you
question?
for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, it does answer my question.
Okay.
Um, yeah, well, thank you so much for your explanation, and, I learned a lot for sure, and yeah, I appreciate your expertise, your experience. You know, you seem to have a lot of experience in the field, and, look forward to speaking in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Nithin, for coming
Any closing
on my
remarks?
channel today. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a real honor talking with you. Um, yeah, I wish you the best of luck on your journeys. Keep the
Thank
community
you.
posted on your app and the progress. Yeah, feel free to let me
Yeah,
know
yeah, for sure.
yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
to wrap
I
up.
don't really know whether I'll do it or
Yeah, but
I don't really know whether I'm gonna create that app, but,
and do
just
you think
like
you're gonna learn?
it's just there for yeah.
Do you think
Go ahead.
you're gonna learn Hindi though?
We'll see, we'll see. I mean, I just wanted to get the like, if I were to go about it, how would I go about it? And,
I
that's really why I wanted to
I
have this
I
conversation.
also think a big thing that very underrated. with doing anything in general, right? Like it seems like you're trying to find the best way right now, but a lot of times you just gotta get started. Right? Just like it's
Right.
like you've
Of
probably heard
course.
this a million times, but like for me, I didn't have a why either when I was studying, so I
Right,
just went
right.
about it for like 3 years. I still didn't have a why. I just still I just liked it, and I just went on for it a long time. So just getting started is very very important. Even if you're
Right,
doing the
right.
horrible method, I did a horrible method for 1 year, but like that's kind of what was the most important thing to actually get me to change everything and do everything else. So like
Right, right, right.
you don't have to constantly think like should I do it or not? Just do it. Like I think also a good example is like I had the why for why I wanted to learn Korean. I wanted to learn it because I'm not going to explain why, but I had the why. But as soon as I started, I was like, oh, not for me, not for me. And I just gave up. So, it's a weird thing, but like, you
I see.
just try before you even
I
like
see what you're
decide
saying.
what's the method I should use. Yeah,
Right, right, right.
just get yourself
Okay,
in the
well,
in the, in the pool before you try to buy the goggles.
yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. Thank you so much once again. Any other closing remarks or
Yeah, always make curry before you buy the white curry
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because you're
for
an idiot.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
pussy, man. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Pleasure talking to you. Cue the outro.
Yeah, so thank you guys for watching today's video. Rather a long one, but I think it's insightful. I will treat this as a podcast. I'll make an intro for this later. Make an intro for intro later. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate the 70 subscribers I have. I have 2 viewers that are probably watching this video.
Thank you very much. Subscribe to Jeffrey Yarn Cooks. All right. Yeah, I gotta go now.